Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay everyone, my name is Fabiyan Junino Elindika. My student number is 31 and I'm from 002 class. And in this video presentation, I will explain about my thesis analysis from the thesis with the title is The Impact of Blended Learning on the Achievement of the English Language Student and their attitudes toward it. And the next is I will explain about the thesis generally from the cover. And as I say before, that the title of this thesis is The Impact of Blended Learning on the Achievement of the English Language Student and their attitude toward it. And this thesis written by Zainab Fakhir and supervised by Dr. Majid Abdulatif. And the purpose of the writing this thesis is this thesis submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirement for the master's degree in English Language and Literature Department of English Language and Literature, Faculty of Art and Science in Middle East University on August 2015. And the next is about the background of this study. Many countries today are seeking to develop their education system through the use of this technology and method of modern learning, such as blended learning in the field of the education. In order to keep pace with the technology development and to achieve the satisfactory results. As education is considered a real investment for any countries and its people, this invites making a good of the technology in preparing student, teacher, curriculum development, and the diversity of teaching methods in an attempt to develop the education process and to provide better learning and education. Therefore, the researcher examines the effect of using blended learning on the achievement of the sixth grade student in private primary school and describes student attitude toward using blended learning and teaching English language. And the next is about the objectives of this study. This study aims to, the first is detecting the effect of using blended learning in achievement of sixth grade student in private primary school in Amman. And the second is about examining their attitudes toward using blended learning in teaching English. And the next is about the limitation and limit of this study. About the limitation of this study, the period of teaching the student is only 2 weeks. Each week is consists to listen. The finding of this study cannot be generalized to the whole population due to the small number of the sample. And about the limits of this study is the study conducted in Amman during the academic semester year from the 2014 until 2015. And the next is about the definition of term. The one of term that from this include in this thesis is about the blended learning. Blended learning theoretically, according to the Graham in 2006, defines blended learning as a combination of instruction from the historically spread model of teaching and learning. The first is about traditional face-to-face learning system and computer-mediated learning. It is also defined as the integration of learning tools such as virtual meeting environment with face-to-face learning. And operationally, it blends the advantage of both face-to-face method and e-learning. It also shifts from the teaching to learning and from the teacher's learning center, called teacher center class, into the student center class. And the next point that I will explain is about highlights a review of literature. In this thesis, researcher uh, include some of opinion from the expert. And the first thing about the literature is about definition of blended learning. According to Graham in 2006, defines blended learning as a conjunction of direct learning setting where student and teacher meet in the same place, basically classroom, to learn with the setting that are based on communication technology as they can communicate distantly. And the second is about the advantages of blended learning. According to Chen and Jones in 2007, outline of other advantages like the deep understanding of the already handled topic by using web-based researches as well as active sharing of information by students in the class. And the next about the literature review is the models of blended learning. According to Filiathan in 2002, categorized blended learning into three models in terms of their drive. Firstly, there is a skill-driven learning models, which integrated self-directed learning, which teachers support to improve his knowledge and skill in certain topics. Secondly, there are attitude-driven learning models, which blend various activeness and delivery media to develop certain behavior. And thirdly, there is the competency-driven learning models, which blend action support tools with knowledge resources to develop classroom competencies. And the next is about dimension of blended learning. In this respect of Silvetri in 2004, define a number of dimensions where customization can happen, such as blended offline and online learning, blended self-paced and live collaborative learning, blended structured and unstructured learning, and blended different combination of the above. And the next is about the challenges and difficulties faced by blended learning. According to Milheim in 2006, also asserted that the use of blended learning strategy is encountering a number of challenges, such as the resultant pressure that teachers have faced by responding to the student inquiries and contacting many of them continuously, in addition to the difficulties related to the student low skill in terms of dealing with the given technologies. And the next is about the concept of attitude towards blended learning. According to Victory and Lockhart in 1995, define language attitude as meta-cognitive knowledge, which include supposition that students have about themselves as learners, about the factors impelling a language learning, about the nature of language learning and teaching. And the next point that I will explain is about the method that used in this study or in this thesis. The first is about the methodology that used in this study. The To achieve the goals of the study, the researcher applied the quasi-experimental method and constructed an achievement test, and the questionnaire was prepared in order to measure the student attitude as well. And about the population and sample on the study, is the population of the study include the sixth grade student from the two school in Amman. The study sample consists 50 female students selected from two schools in Amman, namely Al Ray School and Al Sabelah School. The sample was selected purposefully because of its relevance to the researchers regarding the procedures used. The study sample was distributed to an experimental group that includes 25 students and a control group that includes 25 students also from the sixth class. And the next is about the instrument of that used in this study. The first instrument is the educational program, and the second instrument is procedure of applying blended learning method, and the third instrument is achievement test. The test was prepared to measure student achievement in English language through the four skills according to Bloom taxonomy, yeah, that is knowledge, understanding, comprehension, application, analyzing, synthesis, and evaluation. And the achievement test, including 20 questions, each correct answer has give on 1 mark with the total of 20 marks. And the next instrument is attitude questionnaire. In light of study question, an instrument was prepared to measure the attitude of sixth grade students toward blended learning. The instrument was built according to the review of related studies on attitude toward the blended learning. It consists of 30 items. And the next point, I will explain about the research design. The research design, this study consists of following variables. The first variables is about independent variables. Independent variables including blended learning strategy and traditional teaching method. And about the dependent variables including student achievement, then attitude towards blended learning method. And the next is about the procedures of the collecting the data. After choosing the study, the researchers read a number of previous studies on the impact of blended learning on the students' achievement and their attitude toward it. And the next is the researcher identified the population and selected the sample of which instrument were applied. And the next is the researchers then put the question of the current study depending on the review of literature, and thus the dimension of the study were established. And the next is the test and the questionnaire were designed. And the validity and reliability of the design questionnaire and question of the test were verified. And the next is a letter of permission was obtained from the Middle East University to facilitate the research administer that questionnaire and conduct the test. And the next is the test was administered after 2 units were taught, and a questionnaire was distributed and collected by the researchers in the second semester during April and in 2015. And the researcher trained the choose teacher on the study instrument in the second semester during April in 2015. The results were analyzed and questions of the study were answered. And the next is the researcher presented a recommendation and suggestion for future studies. And last is the list of reference was written in alphabetical order using the APA style. And the last thing that I will explain from this thesis is about the research finding. The data from this research was analyzed by using SPSS and the covariance analysis by applying INCOVA. The results showed that there were statistically significant differences. From the first question in this research is about what is effect of using blended learning on the achievement of 6th grade student in private primary school of Amman. As we can see on the table, uh, it's noticed that the experimental group that was taught by using the blended learning strategy was higher since its reached 4.34, while the means of the control group that was taught by using the traditional way was lower as it reached only 3.24. This indicates that the difference was in favor of the experimental group that learned by using the blended learning strategy, which means that the use of the blended learning strategy had the effect of the achievement of the 6th grade student in English language subject compared to the traditional method, which is the answer of the question 1. And the next question is about what is the effect of using blended learning on the attitude of 6th grade students in teaching English. It noticed from the table that modified mean of the experimental group that was taught by using the blended learning strategy was higher since it reached 4.33 while the mean of the control group that learned by the traditional method reached only 3.24, which indicates that the difference was in favor of the experimental group that was taught by using the blended learning. This means that using the blended learning strategy had a positive effect on the attitudes of the 6th grade student towards the English language compared to the normal method, which formed the answer to the second question. Okay, I think that's all from my explanation about my thesis analysis. I'm sorry if any mistake. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.